So this is going to be a tutorial on how I do my burnt wood grain with alcohol inks. So the first thing you're going to need are some alcohol inks. These are Caramel Antique Wood from the Ranger brand, I believe. Some chalky finish paint. This is Deco Art. You're going to need a makeup sponge, a foam brush, and something for a palette. I'm starting out with a tumbler that I've already done a base coat of my wood grain look using the caramel colored alcohol ink. I really learned how to do this from a tutorial that I found on Little Lee and Rose. I found hers was probably the most easy to understand. I've kind of finessed it a little bit since then, put my own spin on it, but I definitely learned from her. I will link her tutorial down below. So yeah, I'm just kind of going in here with a line of alcohol ink and then using my foam brush to kind of spread it out, let it dry just a little bit, and then as you can feel the ink starting to get tacky, I kind of go in and start going back and forth, or I guess up and down, with my foam brush, and you can see the veining in the wood really starts to show. So basically all we're going to do is keep going around and around until the whole tumbler is done with a second coat of the wood grain. You might notice that the ink pulls up the layer below it. That is totally fine. You just kind of have to keep brushing and brushing, and eventually it will smooth out. And I would highly recommend anyone doing this or using these alcohol inks to wear a glove while you're doing this. It's really hard to get off the skin, and it's probably just for the better to not get it on your skin. And here I'm just showing the difference. So here's one coat of my alcohol ink wood grain effect, and on the other side I have my second coat. The veining really shows through. I find this second coat is just really realistic looking, especially for the burnt wood look that we're going to be doing a little bit later. One of the things I love about alcohol inks is the ability to fix your mistakes really easily. So I didn't like the way that little area was looking. All you have to do is just add another layer of ink, brush it out as you would normally, and your mistake disappears. On the bottom of the cup, I just kind of like to get some ink on the tip of my brush and then lay down some little kind of lines, I guess. Let the ink dry a little and then brush over it. It's the most realistic I've been able to get the bottom to look. It's still not perfect, but I like it. And now we are going to get started on the burnt wood effect. So we're going to start out with some of the chalky finish paint. You really don't need very much. I actually used way too much here, but you're just going to squeeze a little bit of that out onto your palette, and then you're going to get your makeup sponge. And you are going to start just sponging that on. You need a really light coat of the paint. This is just to add some depth behind the next layer of wood grain that we're going to put on. So you really want to kind of just lightly dab it in your paint, and then I like to dab off a whole bunch of the excess onto my palette, and then just keep sponging it on until I like the way that it looks. Alright, so it's finally time for the last coat of wood grain. So I'm using teak wood alcohol ink. I'm sure any darker brown ink would do. Really, you're just using this to transition between that black paint and then the lighter wood grain of the cup. So I started out directly squeezing my ink onto my brush. I ended up accidentally putting a little bit too much on my brush, and you'll see in just a minute I switched over and started using my palette instead. You end up wasting a bit more ink that way, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. So the way that I like to do this kind of transitional wood grain is I like to look at my mug and find kind of the bigger veins in my previous wood grain, and then I try my best to match up some lines with my darker ink with that. You really want to make sure that you're using a super light touch with your brush. You can see I was a little bit too heavy right there, and it's a little bit more difficult to work those little bits out. It's all fine in the end. But yeah, so you're just kind of going to go in, brush in some really thin vein lines that fade into your old vein lines, and then just feather some ink in between the transitional area until it looks like a log that you just pulled out of the fire, I guess. And if you end up accidentally pulling some ink up like I just did, you just got to give it a little bit of time to dry and then just dab a little bit more ink over that kind of bald spot. It's like it didn't happen. And once you're done, it should look something like this. Now all that's left to do is to seal it. What I usually do is do 1 or 2 coats of a matte spray paint, clear spray paint sealant. This is the one that I've been using. And then I usually finish it off with a coat or 2 of epoxy. And as you can see, once you put your glossy sealant on, everything kind of melds together and it looks like a log that you pulled out of a fire, I think. Thanks so much to anybody who watched this. I hope it was helpful, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.